while I was working with clients and organizations, as many of you, one of the things that I would find is my clients saying, my executive coaching clients say, well, Laura, this has been so incredibly helpful for me. Can you also coach my teams? So I see a lot of nodding of heads, which I imagine is probably why you're here today. So I really went on a journey to look more closely at, so what's the difference between coaching teams and my background of organization development and team building and many other forms of help. And what I found, particularly when I went to the literature, it was really very dark. There wasn't much there at all. So I went out and started interviewing coaches. And there are very few who are actually coaching teams. So from that then, I learned a lot, not only from my own practice, but I learned from them. And I'm glad to bring forward to you some of that learning here today. But it really is steeped in practice, right? So let's go ahead and start with some distinctions in terms of the difference between a group and a team. So in terms of a group, you see a definition up there for a group. You can read that yourself. But in terms of a group, you might think of it as, I'll use a simple example, such as maybe a book club. Anyone ever been involved in a book club? Yeah, several people. So when you go to a book club, you have a common interest, right? It's very social. You probably learn some things along the way. However, you're not mutually responsible for some sort of outcomes collectively together that you have to perform on behalf of some other social entity or organizational entity. Okay, so that's a group. A team, on the other hand, or maybe we can even call it specifically a work team. You can look here at Katzenbaum and Smith and their definition. This is really about a small group of people who come together who have not only a common purpose, maybe it's to learn about books or reviewing books, for example, but they also have shared common performance goals that they need to be working on in some sort of an approach for which they hold themselves mutually accountable. So a key piece that they don't have here in their definition that I think is absolutely key that you might want to write down, it's that notion of interdependency. So I rely on you, you rely on me in order to get it done. So those are some distinctions between group and team to help set us up then to look at what's the difference between group coaching and team coaching. I put this particular slide up here for you because these are the kinds of things that I hear from clients when they say, well, Laura, can you come coach my team too? So I say, well, tell me, what's that about? What's happening on your team? So they tell me things such as, just people aren't on the same page about our team goals or our roles or responsibilities. We're juggling a lot of things, and a lot of times what's happening in the organization is that the individual performance expectations sometimes compete with organizational or these team performance expectations. So they get, but my manager says I have to do this, but I'm on this team and I have to do that. So some of that is competing. So you can go ahead and go along this whole list here in terms of what's happening. So in terms of the benefits then for team coaching, these are some of the things that as a result of the team coaching and also what clients are hoping for is that they're going to have this improved team productivity, team performance, engagement, and also to increase the manager's ability to be able to do a better job to coach as well. So one of the things that I've really learned through my practical experience, what I've learned from my clients, what I've learned from doing research on this, is that team coaching really requires an additional set of skills, knowledge, and competence as it relates to teams. So for us to think that we can just go from the one-on-one context into now working with the team, we're probably not setting ourselves up for success and not setting the team up for success. And if what we really want to do is to make a difference and do no harm, then it's really important that we think about that for ourselves personally. And we also think about that in terms of us, hiring and developing our coaches internally and also our coaching programs. So one of the things that I found helpful is it's important to have a set of clear lenses through which we can view, understand, and support the teams. And after we do the breakout with each other, I'll go ahead and share with you one such framework that you can consider using yourself. So this is the same case study that I have shared with several other groups of people such as yourself, and they always get into a very, very engaging conversation. So here's the situation. The CIO of this large company has tasked a team to work with an external vendor to develop and oversee the implementation of a new information technology system for the company. So you're probably familiar with ERPs and all of that. So this is the first major deadline of the team's work. So the team is more newly formed, has come together. The CIO is working with this team. Team is charged with these tasks, and they have their very first major deadline that's due within 30 days. Okay, it's due within 30 days. So they've been working together a while, first major deadline, and their work is attached to this external vendor who's working with them. Now, what's going to happen is if the team doesn't meet this deadline, the company's going to face a $1 million penalty by the vendor. It really happens. So the CIO is very concerned that the team is behind schedule and won't meet this 30-day deadline. So she indicated that her team members are, they're nice, they're polite with each other. She doesn't see any open conflict or anything like that. They're nice, they're polite with each other, but they don't seem to be talking about the real issues of what's really going on. So furthermore, she indicated that her team members complained that they're not getting the information that they need from another department in order for them to be able to complete their work on time. So that's the scenario. Oh, and by the way, you've worked with this coach, or you've worked with this client before. This particular client is one who said, wow, this was so great, can you come work with my team? But she's just called you and said, I'm so worried about this. The team is coming in tomorrow. Would you please do me a favor? Come in, sit with the group, help me out. So you've decided you do have the time, you're available. So you have the time, and you have this relationship, and you want to be able to help out. So you've decided you're going to go ahead and you're going to go in and you're going to sit down with this team for the first time. So that's the scenario. You go in. What do you do? So let's go ahead and start this table back here.
Hello.
Hello, welcome.
This is very odd, but that's okay.
Speaking of that Kleenex box.
We talk a lot about when teams come together and they're under a lot of pressure to deliver something, they often forget the basics of teamwork in terms of simple things like what's role clarity. Does everybody have the same goal in mind? Who are your stakeholders that you have to work with? What are the resource constraints with the other stakeholders? Those kind of things. What does everybody bring to the table? What's your specialty? What's your subject matter expertise? Because everybody's just assuming that maybe, we're all the same, and we're not. And how can we leverage each other knowing that information? So ours was all about asking questions to get information, because we talked a lot about when teams don't have this information, they fill in the gaps and make assumptions, and then that's where the mistrust comes from, et cetera. And it's just like a project team, they always miss that first step of planning, and then they get down the road where now they have to deliver, and they missed all these fundamental things at the beginning.
Great.
So that's kind of, did I miss anything? Team?
Excellent. Well done. All right. Well, let's go ahead and pass it along to other teams. So go ahead and add. So you may have said some of those things as well. So what else?
I think we had I love this. I think we had a slightly different approach. First, being all curious learners, we thought it was important to collect more data on the situation in order to really structure something customized. We had questions such as cross-functional, size, global means of communication, frequency of meeting, and those sorts of things. We also played with the idea of perhaps doing some kind of quick survey of individual members, if not interviews, to again collect data and identify common themes.
And data about?
About what each individual thinks is hindering their expectations, role clarity, some of the things our colleagues mentioned.
Okay.
In terms of working with the team specifically, we wanted to focus on a gap analysis with them. Where do they think they are right now? We were very conscious of that guillotine of that $1 million fee, so we figured quick action is needed, and what is helping and hindering this team from meeting that upcoming and looming deadline and deliverable.
Okay, excellent, great, thank you. Who'd like to go next? Yeah? Okay, so anything that you want to add?
Pass the box. Who wants to speak? Go for it. Okay.
Well, one instant confusion we had was I heard you say that the team would have to pay the vendor $1 million. So we wanted to sort of find out who's the boss in this situation, who's that stakeholder. Because my team here was talking about bringing in, like who's the team, bringing in the team of the vendor with the team, which I thought was great. I never would have thought of that in 1,000 years. Then whichever way it went, we were going to do team building immediately using an appreciative inquiry approach to increase the positivity of the team so there would be more interpersonal openness so that it would build trust right away to try to diffuse that intense hair-singeing pressure.
Okay, hair singeing, I like that. Great, okay, go ahead and pass it. I understand you can throw that thing too. Okay, anything else to add that you haven't already heard? What did your group talk about?
I think to add was incentives. So how are we going to incentivize the team to meet that? We talked about ensuring proper stakeholders, so everybody, so both the people outside of their team as well.
Okay.
And starting off with a new team assimilation, including assessments to try to help them understand each other a little bit better, and right away doing something fun, that's outside of the heavy scope of what they're doing.
Okay, so let them actually enjoy themselves. Okay, let's quickly pass.
Nice job. Anybody over here?
I guess that'll be me. So I think one thing that we would just add to it from a little different perspective was we were very conscious of the 30-day deadline. So we really took a mixed approach of getting in and doing facilitation, business knowledge, sort of finding out what the issues of the team were. We also keyed on the fact that they had mentioned, or you had mentioned in the case that the team was not getting information from this other department. So really getting into the team and understanding how that was driving it. And then we talked a lot about how the leader involvement. Did I miss anything?
Okay, and the piece about just for me to clarify, the piece about they weren't getting information from others, were you planning on bringing them in, or
I don't think
We
we
just
got
wanna get
that
more
far. We just
information about
more,
it.
Was it legitimate,
To
if
find
you will?
out about it.
Was it really internal, external
Okay.
sort of blaming, or was there a legitimate business thing that said, we need to
Got
connect
it.
with this other team,
Okay.
get that critical path, and that
Great,
would help us.
thank you. Okay, next team. Toss it. Woohoo!
Okay, so I think we talked about most everything. The only 2 points that we didn't cover was really getting an understanding of what has the leader communicated to his or her team. We knew that there was a deadline and what their deliverables were. Were they clear on that? Were they clear on the consequences? And what happens if they don't deliver?
Okay, excellent, great, thank you. Go ahead and toss.
I don't want to hit anybody.
I got it. One of the biggest things that our group kept coming back to is, would we actually take the work? We would have to get really clear on what exactly the organization
Great.
expected us to accomplish in 30 days. And does the situation really need a coach, or do they need a consultant to help them get their work done against 30 days?
Great.
And then maybe we follow it up with coaching. But we also talked about a kind of a parallel path with coaching along the way, and adding a consultant to the group.
Excellent,
as well.
great, thank you.
Go ahead.
Ditto.
Okay,
No, yeah.
all right, then there's a team behind you.
Yeah, so now maybe I'll just mention this, since we all talked about establishing it up front. One of the things we mentioned is to have something, an action plan and action items, a way to track accountability at the end. And then part of the follow-up, as Marshall mentioned earlier this morning, that's one of the most important pieces of it is follow-up. So the accountability, measure, track, follow-up.
Great, excellent. And there truly is a team behind you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Yes,
I think everyone has said probably what we would indicate.
ditto.
But I think stakeholder expectation is huge, and I think also enrolling people who you need throughout the organization to support you is critical. So I think those would be a couple things we would add.
Excellent. Okay, great,
I
thank
don't
you.
have a strong arm, so.
I'm a little nervous.
How far can
about
you
this.
toss? 1,
Somebody at this
2,
table?
3. Woo! Well done, well done.
So we talked about the idea of doing a pre-mortem. That's work based on Huggy Rao's Scaling Up Excellence. So it's where you take the idea of 2 questions: what would it look like if we failed, and plan a roadmap of failure, and then a second one of what would it look like if we were to succeed, and have a roadmap of success. And then after you've established both of those, ask the question, well, where are we now, and where do we want to go? And so we kind of plan everything out that way. So that's in addition to the other things that were said at
Excellent.
the other tables. Did I
Great,
miss
terrific.
anything?
Good. Yeah, so we've got 2 more tables here, one in the middle here, and then one feverishly writing. And then I think we have just one more table here, and we'll go ahead and move on.
That's okay. I think that everything that we put was covered, or maybe people said it a little bit
So I've
differently.
hit
but it's
saturation.
just- it's kind of like in marketing when they say it depends. So ours was really go in, ask a lot of questions around a lot of the different things that people said, stakeholders, one-on-one with the group, with the leader, and then based on those different things, then we would decide what assessments, models, whatever consultants, whatever else we would
Great.
bring in.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. The first one is what I've labeled task or functional. So that really has a lot to do with coordination and results. So those are those things such as what does the group need to accomplish in terms of its goals? I mean, you're saying, so what do you need to accomplish and by when? And $1 million penalty by who? And what are some of those resources that you need? What do you have? What don't you have? Where are some of those pinch points? But this is kind of more about the structure, the coordination, so a lot of those kinds of things that we already heard on here. For example, this group right back here started with planning, resources, coordination, et cetera. The next area here has to do with group dynamics and process. So how does the group interact? And what are some of the underlying emotional and psychological processes that really influences the group's ability to perform its tasks? So as we can see with the task functional, we're looking through the lens of focusing on that coordination, their structure, their decision making, et cetera. This particular focus is about relationship. Relationship with you, each other, the teams, yes? So that's another one. That's where we might get into, well, what are the levels of trust? Someone had asked about trust. Conflict. Tell me about conflict here. Tell me about if we were better at debating ideas and being constructive in the way in which we debate, how much better would we be as a team? How more quickly, how more fast can we work together and more effectively? The first two are the ones that I find responses the most when I talk with coaches and also when I work with teams. These are the two primary lenses that stand out.
I was wondering how you, in your model and your approach, distinguish between coaching, OD consulting, and facilitation, those three different hats.
Yes. I'm going to get on my soapbox just a little bit now. You had to ask me, didn't you? If we are true to the literature, if we say that we're knowledge-based, and if we're true to the literature, where coaching in organizations is steeped comes out a lot of the OD literature. We can go back to Lippitt and Lippitt, 1986, with Coaching in Action, I think that the book is called. If you look at that, they talk about the continuum of the role of the consultant. The role of the consultant, directive to non-directive. The coach falls more on the non-directive. The advice giver falls more on the directive. But it's both the role of the consultant. I'll leave these questions for you. We don't have time to process them today, but think about what is potentially missed when one or more of these lenses are overlooked or hidden from view. And what's the impact of that? And again, think about for yourself, which of these lenses are more characteristics or less characteristic of your own organization. Based on what that is, then you might look to say what other lenses might also be helpful. They already have the strength. Let's build on that strength and what else could be helpful, what might be missing for the organization. And then also be thinking about how might this be useful to you in your own development, in curriculum development, and even the hiring and education of new coaches.